expected of me? What's expected of my students? What's expected of the principal in the building? And that's what today is. It's that why behind what we're doing. It's the way, again, for us to work together to make sure that everyone's talking the same language. It's critical that when we roll things out district-wide, that you fully understand what's your expectation and what's our expectation. And then you hold us to that expectation. So the team that's coming together today is very committed to making great things happen, not only for students, but also for you. So I want to commend them and make sure they realize how much I appreciate the work behind it. I appreciate the administrators being here today because, again, we're going to lean on them to make sure that great things are happening in our buildings and they have the resources that they need. If you went to IU, when I went to IU in 1980s, the principals have heard me say this before, we did whole language. Anybody remember whole language? Just a few people around the room. And that was truly, if you give kids books and give them enough books, they'll be able to read. So that was the entire approach for IU whenever I went to school. So then whenever I started digging in and I was a teacher, we started talking about phonics. And I'm like, no clue what you're talking about. Don't you just give kids a book and they'll be able to read it? And so that really opened up my eyes to we need a different approach. Then whenever I became a principal, it became even more obvious how critical our K-2 teachers are in the foundational skills. And so whenever those teachers like Nora and Lisa and Kathy would talk about phonemic awareness and phonics, again, it wasn't in my wheelhouse or my background, but I needed to make it in my background. You all are already a step ahead of principals because many of our principals haven't worked in that arena, K-2. So they come to you, they lean on you, and they say, what do we need to know foundationally? But we're also professionally developing them so that they know the right questions to ask. Because again, Chris walking into a kindergarten classroom may not fully understand what happens in a kindergarten classroom or the questions to ask. So this year, we're developing Chris and all the other principals to say what should be happening in our K-2 classrooms, what questions should you ask, and what should we see happening in those classrooms. Well, wait a minute. What happened to the UDL focus where we give lots of options and we give lots of choices? It's still within our UDL framework. It's still the opportunity for us to live in that framework, still do the things that you need to do to meet kids skill by skill and kid by kid where they are. But we're saying this is the district focus. Oh, so we only have to worry about one critical standard. No, that's not what we're saying. But what we're saying today is we're coming together to talk a language so that we can all hear it, we all know what's expected of us, and we all know where we're going as a district. So at this point, I'll turn it over to KD, who will start us out. And again, I want to give these people a round of applause because they worked hard to make today happen.
Okay, so we are here today, and you all are aware, it's the K-2 district focus. So we felt that it was most critical to break up into two groups because our foundational skills and our 3 through 6 we're going to be here on Thursday hearing a similar message. We felt like it was critical that you hear from each other and in this room together the same message, because as we go out and we're talking, it's at this school and this school and this group and this classroom. So we really want to, as Dr. Hack mentioned, this is our district focus. So when you hear us talking, we want you to hear a common message and common language that's coming from us, as well as we can all have common language across grade level teams in the district. So pretty much, we're going to go through why we're all here and review the dashboards that have been created. So we're going to kind of tag both ELA and math back to back as we go through today. You saw a long time frame, 3:30 to 5:30. We don't know that we'll be here till 5:30, but we wanted to make sure that we could address questions and concerns and make sure that you walked out of here with as much information as you possibly can take in today, and some resources to take with you so that you understand where we're going. And then we also want to look at the strategies that have been determined for ELA and math. So you either have a hard copy in front of you of the slides, and it's kind of small, we don't want to just say it's some paper, and it's also digitally in its learning. So if you want to follow along and take notes, please make sure you have a set. If you don't, I think there's a couple extras over here we can bring out to you. But just going through today's slides so you know what this looks like today. So becoming familiar with the district goals for ELA and math, and like I said, we're going to go through literally ELA, and then right behind that, math, and step by step. So you're going to kind of toggle back and forth between each one. And then we also want to have common understanding of the strategies that support the district goals. So we have worked this summer talking with teachers at your grade level with what does it look like at your grade level in the district for these standards. And so we're going to kind of map out what that looked like in the process that took place to get where we are today with the launch and the district focus. So we have been talking at the administrative building, you're probably in your buildings, about systems thinking. That's probably not a foreign word at this point. And getting everybody to work as a connected unit on the same goals and targets. And so part of that work was looking at our data collectively and looking at BCSC as a whole, which is why we're all here together, because whether you're at Schmidt, Parkside, Southside, it doesn't matter. We're all part of the system that is BCSC. So we want to ensure that no matter where we are, our kids are getting that guaranteed Bible curriculum, which are our critical standards, and also that we are focused as a district that even on top of those critical standards, we have established goals that we're trying to move that needle for kids in areas that we see as an area of need. So we want to focus our efforts, not just little pockets, but as a whole system to target these areas and make sure that we're improving student academic performance. So this is where we started, and we kind of looked at two questions for ELA and math, how we work together as a district to ensure student performance in phonemic awareness, phonological awareness, and phonics that meets or exceeds grade level expectations. And I can't tell you how many times we said those 3 Ps, and it was like, blah, 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 because it's a lot to take in and it's a lot to address. And it's a lot of coming together and agreeing on what does this mean and what does it look like in our district. And then for math, how do we work together as a district to ensure student performance in the math strand of computation that meets or exceeds grade level expectations? So one, if you just hear that, it's a big, compelling challenge. We sat with a group of teachers this summer and targeted that question right there and just said, what does this look like if we work together to ensure student performance in these areas? And it led to some great conversations. We addressed some barriers, what are some solutions that we can get to, and that's how we came to today. But this is where we keep going back to, how do we work together? How do we keep that systems approach? How do we ensure that everyone in the system is working towards that collective goal? And also narrowing to ELA and math. So you can see our focuses are outlined there. So our academic standards, when we looked at which areas we wanted to focus on, it really came down to our foundational skills in K-2 for math, or for ELA. So these are brief descriptions. Of course, there's more to it than just this very simple brief description. But kindergarten, blending CBC sounds to make words, using letter sounds, knowledge to decode words, and using letter sound knowledge to decode 2-syllable words. So you can see there's that progression. And the reason why first grade, you can see is not 4.2. Growth model for first grade, that's not a critical standard that they're reporting. So while they're in the same wheelhouse, they don't report the 4.2. And we didn't want to redistribute first grade and say, in addition to that, we're going to change your reporting system as well. And we felt like, as you can see, that they still do build together on the same skills. And then for computation, we focused on adding and subtracting, utilizing pictures up to the number 10, add and subtract within the number 20, and add and subtract within the number 100. So you can see that progression of skills from K-2 that's taking place. And we felt that when we looked at the data, which is where you start with systems thinking, is looking at the current state, where are we? We looked at growth model report card data for this last year. And we looked at where we were in K, first and second grades, for both ELA critical standard 4.2, 4.1 for first, and 4.2 for second, and where we were with that computation strand CA1 in K-2. So you can see where we landed at the end of the year, and I just want to clarify it with some of the systems things and things that we put in place for this current year. Some of the reasoning behind that is 4.2 for kindergarten, 83%. That may not encompass every single kindergartner because we don't have that Q4 score. That could have been a Q3 score. So we're tightening up some of our expectations just so we have that common data to look at as well. So from that, we were able to determine these are some areas that we feel like we could make improvements on, and then we started building from there. So from here, you're going to hear ELA, and then you're going to hear math. So we're going to toggle back and forth between what we're doing with the ELA targets and then what we're going to do with math. So Delaney and Kirsten will go back and forth. Questions that come up, just for not time, but there are Post-its on your tables in front of you. Please feel free to jot questions down on those Post-its and write them up. I'll grab them, and we can address those as they come up at the end, so that we make sure that we may address it before we get to the end, but we want to make sure we capture your question. So please make sure, take notes, questions, and we'll address all those at the end of today. Okay?
Okay, so when we look at the targets, we first look at our current state, which you just explained, and then we say, okay, based on that, where do we want to go, and what do we think would be the most useful way to get there? When we started talking about ELA, the first thing was we have a research-based system that we're supposed to be using, a resource, and so that was our first target. We want teachers to utilize the adopted resource. Does that mean you cannot supplement? Absolutely not. If there is a gap, or you see a gap, or you think there's a gap for a particular group of students, absolutely supplement for those students. The next three have to do with the strategies that when we were looking at research best practices, we talked to teachers. The three things that we came up with as targets were utilizing finger tapping, or finger stretching, or any version of that, using sound boxes, and then using dictation, the relationship between letter sound and actually writing. And then our measurable target as far as our quarterly benchmarks go is going to be that 80% of K to second grade students are going to score an 80% or above on those district benchmarks. The thing about the district benchmarks that we want to make very clear is that they are the expectation of where that student should be at that moment. They're not end of year expectation. Because with this, we want to know at the end of quarter one, how many of our students are on target where they should be right now. Not are they at the end of the year expectation yet. We want to know right now data. So those are our targets for ELA.
Okay, as far as math targets go, to start with, it's exactly the same as what we thought with ELA. We thought we have a research-based adopted resource that our teachers should be utilizing, which is new this year, which is Go Math. So one of the math targets is that all teachers will utilize the Go Math resource. Another target that we're using is K-6 teachers will be developed in using process standards. I know there are 8 of them. We are only focusing on 3 this year. 1, 4, and 6. So attending to precision, persevering, and using math models are the 3 that we're going to use. We're developing principles on those as well during principal meetings. They're going to be bringing things back to the buildings. And then during our district workshops, Kirsten and I are going to be working with you on the math process standards as well and how to implement those best in your classes. The next one is that teachers will be using the assessment vocabulary on all common assessments. So there is assessment vocabulary for grades 3 through 8. That is in that It's Learning course. You can also find it on the DOE. And there are about 10 or 15 words that we want you guys to be using on your common assessments to just help the kids get used to and familiarize themselves with that assessment vocabulary. And just making sure you're highlighting it and talking to the kids about how it could mean the same as something else. And just getting them used to that so when they see it on testing time, it isn't throwing them for a loop. Okay? And then the last one is like what Kirsten just talked about, was 80% of K-2 students will score an 80% or above on the CA1 standard on the district benchmark. So just like she said, math is the same way. It's where the kids should be at the end of quarter 1, at the end of quarter 2. They need to be at an 80% or better. Okay.
I'm going to talk a little bit about the adopted resource piece. So in our district, out of the 300 teachers that we have approximately at the elementary level, 150 of them, 150 have 5 years less experience. So when you think about that as a new teacher, your first year, you're looking around still going, where's the bathroom? What times, how do we do this? So it really takes you three years to get grounded on theory, as well as practices. And we don't always have that time or luxury to get our kids grounded. And so using the adopted resource gives you a best practice resource that you can use. Now I want to go back to what Kirsten said, which is it the only resource you can use? Absolutely not. You know as professionals, that's the art and science of teaching. When there's something as a gap that needs to be explored, or students need to be pushed in a different way, and you have that resource, that's wonderful. That's why you're a teacher. That's why we trust you to do what you need to do. But the majority of your work should be in the Wonders adopted resource. Why? Because it is research-based. So again, I'm going to go back to my own teaching when I was 20 years ago, and I would teach Where the Red Fern Grows. If you know that book, I taught it for 15 years straight. Loved that book. Was it research-based? No. Was it my heart? Was my heart in it? Absolutely. Do I do a good job with kids? I think I did. Was it research-based? Again, no. I thought I was doing the right thing. How did I know? I just guessed. We can't afford that anymore. And so that's why, again, when we say use Go Math and use Wonders, it's because it's there. It has ways that you can push kids. It also has some things to think about if you're seeing some gaps. Look at those first. It's critical that you have that in your room. Our parents and taxpayers have paid for that resource, so let's use it. So again, if you're having questions about that, jot them on those sticky notes. Let us talk about that with you. If you're having some things like, what about this or what about that? That's the art of teaching. When the two of you decide, the 2 or 3 of you in your grade level decide to branch out and do a small book that's outside of Wonders, is that okay? Absolutely, as long as you know why you're doing it, and it's not the meat of what you do throughout the year. I just want to be clear on that, of why we're using the adopted resource. All right?
Okay, so real quick, we want to run through some accountability and kind of who's responsible for what type of logistics. And just so that you know what we're doing with the district, at the district level, and then what principals are doing, students are doing, and then you guys are doing as well. So when we look at the district, these are some things that are going to be happening at that level. Dr. Hack is going to be having some very focused conversations with the principals, looking at their data. We are going to look at these quarterly benchmarks with the principals and talk through best practices and things that they can do to support their building, things we can do to support all of your buildings. We are creating a look for document for principals, which your principals can then share with you, of things for when they walk through your classroom, a K-2 classroom, what should they be looking for? If they are not developed on that, they're not going to even know what to be looking for when they're seeing, are you doing these things? We are creating quarterly assessments. They are end of quarter. You're not taking them at the beginning, which you know what you should know already at this point. They are end of quarter assessments. We wanted to talk a little bit about connecting that to Pivot. The end of year or beginning of year, middle of year, end of year assessments that we were required to take on Pivot last year, we are not required to take those. Can you still use those as a tool for assessment? Yes. If you want to use those assessments, you have to email Kim Kennedy, and she has to open them for your class. Okay? Otherwise, you will not see them. But if you want to use them, email her and still use them, absolutely. But these will essentially be replacing those. They're shorter, they're more focused, and we think that they're going to give us better data on our focus goals. And then developing teachers, so having workshops on different strategies and things that are connected to the district focus. That's all going to be on us to make sure. And I guess a little plug for us, reach out to us if there's something that you have a question about, if you need development on a particular topic. That's what we're here for, okay?
As far as administrator accountability goes, they're going to be having focused conversations between principals and teachers using the current data. So whatever data that you generate from these benchmark assessments, principals will have access to, the district has access to, you guys have access to see the growth. And principals will be using that to talk to you guys about what's going on around our focus and how we can move our students forward, and how we can fill those gaps if need be. They're going to utilize the look-fors and focus questions that Kirsten talked about that we're creating. and they are going to think strategically about teacher movement. As far as student accountability goes, we would like for the students to be involved in this as well. We want them tracking their goals, creating goal sheets, figuring out how they can move along in this goal and move up through quarter 1 to quarter 2, quarter 3 to quarter 4, and see their progression and see how that goes. We have examples of these that we can share with you, so if you need those, let us know and we can share them out with you. But as far as that goes, we want the students to create the goals and monitor them.
Okay, so as far as teacher responsibilities or accountability, the biggest thing we want you to understand is that the PLC process should be the catalyst to drive this work. All of these mostly go back to your PLC. So we want you in your PLC to be sharing best practices and strategies that are reflecting student achievement within these BCSC focused goals. Intentionality should be used with assessment vocabulary during instruction and then also on your common assessments. Now K-2, we put in there when appropriate. We're not saying use 5th, 6th grade vocabulary, assessment vocabulary words when they are not ready for that. However, looking at those assessment vocabulary, for ELA, there's a bigger list, and we just linked 3rd grade's list for all K-2. We just want you to intentionally start maybe every once in a while plugging a few of those words so that they've heard them before, so that when they get to 3rd grade, it doesn't become this magic place where all of a sudden we're using assessment vocabulary that we've never heard before. We want you to review growth of each student and provide additional support and or enrichment based on data. That again goes back to your PLC. That's when you're talking about what are we going to do with this group of kids who does not get it? What are we going to do with the group of kids who needs enrichment, who's already there? You are going to report on the district focused standards quarterly. So on growth model, these standards, the ELA and the math, get reported on quarterly. And then we want you conferring with students on their goals and growth. Don't just let them set a goal and then never talk to them about that goal. So that's probably the biggest piece as far as that goes. Okay, so a little bit about the strategies. And basically this piece, before we kind of wrap up this part, take a break and answer questions, is on BCSC Connect. That is your best friend when it comes to the district focus. We've created a folder called District Focus in BCSC Connect. It has an entire K-2 folder that has resources on all of these strategies, the finger tapping, the sound boxes, and the dictation. There are videos of BCSC teachers in there doing this with small group so that you can see model instruction. There are web resources. There are all kinds of resources pertaining to the assessment vocabulary is linked in there as well. So as far as the strategies go, in just a few minutes, we'll let you kind of explore some of those on the BCSC Connect website as well.
As far as math goes, we didn't think that we needed to teach you guys how to add 2 plus 2. We think that you guys are pretty good at that already. So we wanted to dive deeper and go into the process standards like I mentioned earlier. So the 3 process standards that are our strategies are making sense of problems and persevering in solving them. That's when the kids are asking if things make sense, they're developing a plan on how to solve a problem, and they're evaluating their process in how they're solving said problem. They're modeling with mathematics. That doesn't only have to be with like the typical math manipulatives, that's also including real world problems and all of those other math models like using manipulatives or drawing lattice method. Whatever way you teach your students to model is how PS4 works. Number 6 is attending to precision, and it's both in their calculations and explanations. So it's making sure that they're answering the problems correctly and they know why they're answering it that way. And then again, the use of the adopted resource. And then also during the PLC process, going into the assessment vocabulary and making sure everyone in your PLC team is using those words and making sure that your students know them. Katie?
go into a couple classrooms. I know we're only in August, so we're hoping to be able to go into multiple classrooms. This is a little plug for you all. If you'll let me come to your classroom and demonstrate some of these skills with your students, that would be great. I know I'm gonna thank you, Amy, for letting me come to your room tomorrow and video for 3rd through 6th. But we were able to steal some ideas from Carmela this summer and look at some of the resources that she uses with students in these 3 areas and make some short videos. The longest one is 4 minutes, so nothing earth-shattering or super time-consuming. But if you are wondering what are the ways I can do finger tapping, I've finger tapped myself out of ways to do this. I mean, I don't know another way to do it. She has some great tools and resources and different methods that she's using with her students. And if you have a way that's working, please send us a note. We would love to have more BCSC teachers documented and resources to share, again, in that district focus folder of real people in our district doing these skills and with students in our classrooms. So there are 3 different videos with multiple strategies within each one. So there's a finger tapping one, a sound boxes, and a dictation. And actually while I was there, I was like, well, what's this resource? I really love this thing you're using, and I've never seen it in any of the classrooms I've gone in yet. And she was like, well, it's probably because it's expensive. And I was like, awesome. Well, keep it in the back of my mind, kind of like you all. When you come to resources and you're like, this would be so great to have. You guys are in that early intervention grant grades, 1st and 2nd. Think about what we can do systematically as a group to move kids in that direction. And so we were able to look at some resources and find ways. So hopefully in the next 2 weeks, in addition to your math manipulatives, you'll be getting some other resources that guide you with these specific skills. So hopefully you see that we have worked through the summer, looked at it as a system, brought teachers together, talked many, many times. I'm sure if you were in that group with us this summer, it's been many conversations even since then on how to best implement this in our district and how to move that forward as a K-2 team. So if there are things that you're seeing and resources that you feel are a great supplement, we want those to be the right resources and the right supplements for our kiddos in these grade levels to meet these skills. And you guys are our best frontline people to let us know what those are. So please reach out and let us know. But if you are, like I said, in a space and you're like, dictation, that's not something I've really done. I don't know where to start with littles with that. You know, watch a quick video and kind of get some ideas. And then, of course, what teachers do, we go in and find other ways and strategies to implement with our students in our classroom and the people in front of us. So if you're willing, send me an email. I only have till October 6th to come on the video. Kirsten will come video after that. So please let us know if you're willing to let us come in. If you have questions, we're gonna take a break, let everything kind of sink in, write them down. Just bring them and plug them on the table or hand them to one of us and we'll put them up there. We're going to get into the resources on It's Learning, make sure everybody knows where they are, and look through some tools that are available, and take assessments. So take a break, write down questions that you have, and we'll come back together at...
Standards are the standards that you're looking to make your pacing guide. Once you get your pacing guide done, then you start plugging in, I wonder where this is in Wonders, and how we're going to get to that. Oh, it's not in Wonders, or this seems weak. Talk about it with your PLCs, and then figure out what needs to happen to make it stronger. Again, the what is we need to do these things, the how is up to you. So when you see the word finger tapping, we want you to use finger tapping as a strategy this year. How you do it and how it gets done in your classroom, that's the art and science of teaching, that's yours. Wait a minute, do we have to do, when we see this video of Carmela, do we have to do it that way? Nope. Nope. The how part is up to you. Carmela gives you a way to try. I hadn't thought about that. Great. Or that's not good for me. Then don't do that. I want to make that clear. About the critical standards are the standards that should be taught, that guaranteed and viable curriculum before they move on to the next grade level. Next question. Where do teachers get the look for list? And we said we would push that out to principals. Principals are meeting next week Again, to say, when you walk into a first grade class, these are some opportunities for you to see some of these dynamic things happening in our first grade classrooms. As soon as we develop principles around that, that will get pushed out to not only them but you. We're about being transparent. This is not a gotcha. This is not, if Kim is teaching a different book, Amy shouldn't walk in and go, why aren't you using wonders? Now, if Amy walks into that classroom 5, 6, 7 days in a row, and Kim is not in the wonders resource, it's a great opportunity for Amy to say, hey Kim, are you working with your wonders? Tell me what's going on. And then Kim to say, yes, I am, but this is why I'm using this resource. Great, super. It's not a gotcha. That's not any of this. This gives us direct focus, and it gives intentionality to what we feel should be happening in all of BCSC classrooms. All right? So, any other questions?
Yes.
Katie has a couple, but those are the 4 that I think I was responsible for as they jotted them down. Again, I appreciate the honesty. We cannot get better unless you tell us what's happening in those classrooms. These guys are out and about in these buildings, but it comes down to what they see, what they hear, and you guys giving them the feedback so that we can adjust at our level. This is the first time we've tried this. If you've been in this district as long as I have, we've not had a district focus saying this is what we're going to do. How you do it is up to you, but this is what we're going to focus on. So it's an opportunity for us to grow. If it's a fail, at least we're failing with standards that we feel like are critical to kids. I don't think we're going to fail. One, we're not set up for that. But again, we want that feedback from you to say, yep, this is on target, or hey, think about this differently. And we'll make that happen.
Okay, so we're just going to run through some questions. These are a couple questions all about the assessment. So when we get into the course, we're going to computation, delete. Math is already in there. We'll dump the assessments for ELA in there as well, so you'll be able to see them. But they, as we've said, are not addressing end of year expectation. So in Q1, in September 25th, when that window opens, it's where that child should be in that grade level at that time. So our end of year expectation is blending CDC words. We're not going to do that in Q1. What needs to happen before we get there? What are the skills that are going to get there? By Q4, we are going to ask them to do that. But what are we doing to lead up to that? What are those prerequisite skills that are critical for them to be able to blend CDC words? Same with computation. We're not going to give a first grader, I think, was up to 20 in Q1. You know, we've mapped this out with grade level input from people who are your peers, who are in the grade level teams to design these. There we go. Does this mean there are 4 separate tests? Yes. There's a Q1, there's a Q2, there's a Q3, and there's a Q4. What format? Paper, pencil. Okay. Will we have access to the OG online resources? I don't know if you mean the multi-sensory course that's in It's Learning or an actual OG resource course. You can, if you're not in the multi-sensory, email me. If you want to be in that course on It's Learning, I'm happy to load you in there as a participant. If you're talking about the online OG, I don't know what that is, but come find me and I'll try to help you. Are common assessments updated to include academic vocab? No, they're not. That's why as a PLC, we need to address that collectively. Hopefully as we do get through this, each time those will be able to be incorporated. Are they on the quarterly benchmark? Yes. And for K-2, it's when appropriate, just to reiterate that as well, since you guys don't have a specified list. Do we need to create our own goal sheets? No, there are a couple examples in the district focus. If that doesn't work for you, you can of course find your own and use your own, but there are some different options available to use for tracking student goals. If we are using Wonders Go Math to the T, then how would strategies differ among PLC team members? I would guess that within Wonders, you're going to have multiple strategies available to you. So if you would do Meccan strategy for theme, if you would do the Wonders theme unit, and they're going to provide strategies, you're going to have multiple strategies available to you. So I think your PLC, when they come together, would address that question, that they could still differ. How should we address timing? Go Math. Go Math doesn't address addition until chapter 5. Only addresses it then. How do we teach all 4 quarters? So addition, I don't know what grade this is, but for other skills, I would guess that addition is going to be something that you spiral review throughout the year. And in Q1, if you see that you're just introducing up to 5, I don't know if you're doing that during your calendar time, or you're doing that during your morning work, or you're doing that during your whole group lesson, but I would have to look at chapter 5 and where that comes up. But I'm sure we can find ways to support you. Please reach out to Delaney or us, and we're happy to come and locate. Same for Wonders. Please email us. If you're like, honestly, I haven't used it as my meat and potatoes, and this is my first year activating my calendar. I don't know what I'm doing. Please reach out to us. This is not a gotcha. I think as our doc said, we want to provide resources. We want to help you find resources. So if you're not familiar or you're unable to locate the digital or print, please let us know. If you're new to a grade level, that's always a challenge to know what's available in my grade level resource kit, because we're spinning 100 miles an hour already. So please reach out to us. We're happy to help some of these logistic concerns. So without further ado, we'll get into the course. I took the hard questions.
So when you go into BCSC Connect, you should go to Elementary Resources, District Focus. K-2, I put the dashboards in there as well, so if you need that again. And then I put the PowerPoint from today as well. The videos from Carmela are there, as well as the web resources. When she was just scrolling, I was watching somebody else scroll through too. I didn't see the examples for the goal sheets, but I will put those, I have those. So I don't know if they just didn't get put on there or what, but I will put those on there. See, I don't see them there. They were there. So there's a link to the assessment vocabulary. Again, if there's anything else you guys want to see on this page, let us know. I can find whatever it is that you want, get it on there so that everybody can access it. If you are doing this and you come up with a great strategy that you think would be beneficial for other people, let me know so that I can put it on there so that we just continue to build this bank of resources for everybody to kind of look at and check out. In just a minute, when she goes over is looking at the math benchmarks, I'm going to load the ELA benchmarks on there so you can see them. Okay.
Okay, in the math folder on It's Learning, there is the K-2 District Focus PowerPoint. There's the math dashboard, which you guys have in front of you. The math assessment vocabulary PDF is linked on here. Like I said, it's 3 through 8 has the same vocabulary, and it's only like 15, 16 words. And then in the folder is another folder called Quarter 1 Benchmarks, and each benchmark is listed in there and linked. And then at the bottom is a link to the folder that has proctoring guides. So just like on the writing prompt, they look very similar. The proctor guides, if you pull one up, they have the purpose of the assessment window, standards. For kindergarten, we put a script on there because we thought that the words were kind of overwhelming, putting them onto the actual assessment. So kindergarten is the only one that has the proctor script. Everyone else, it just says to read the directions to the students. It gives you the classroom environment and proctor support. So this is just like any other standardized test where IEP, 504, ILP accommodations should be followed. They should not use a calculator on the math ones. And they can complete the assessment on their own with as much time as needed. It isn't a timed test, which is very important to know. They don't have like 30 seconds to answer as many questions as they can on the page. It's until they finish. They can have scratch paper if needed. They're encouraged to show their work. And obviously, if all of your kids are done, you can end the session whenever. So those are all in there. Each grade level has their own proctoring sheet. And if you have any questions about those or the math Quarter 1 benchmarks, let me know. But as far as these go, they were all teacher created. We brought a group of teachers together over the summer, and they created all of the Quarter 1 benchmarks. We're bringing them back together after this first round to see how it went and maybe make changes if need be. So let us know if there are any issues that arise.
So we get many questions that say, why don't we have a district common assessment? Well, this one is a district common assessment. The fear whenever we do a district common assessment is somebody will say, that assessment doesn't work for my kids. So that's why we continually give you the professionalism to create your own common assessments at your building. We're hearing continually that, hey, a common assessment district-wide would really help us. We're considering that. We're listening, we're considering it, but we really know that the more you create those common assessments at your grade level, the more you fully understand the standards, and then whenever they're assessed, you're like, oh, I get it now. Or that wasn't a good question. So again, we're taking a chance with these benchmarks. We're creating the common assessment for the district, and you have the responsibility and the opportunity to say, that one stinks, and give us that feedback on where they are, quarter 1, quarter 2, quarter 3, and quarter 4. We'll listen and we'll make those changes as we see fit, but it's an opportunity for us to have one standardized assessment across the grade levels. We'll look at those assessments and say, hey, looks like Schmidt Kindergarten, you guys are rocking it. What do we need to do to push whatever you're doing out to the other 10 buildings? Again, it's that opportunity to sit down with Brett and say, this is amazing, these results your teachers are getting, what are they doing? Oh, they're all doing X. Super, then let's look at that at the district level. That's what we're talking about and why we would give those assessments the way we are now. So I think at this time we're going to let you play around, open up your laptops, whatever you brought, get in there, see if it makes sense to you, start asking us questions, look at the proctoring guide, look at the assessments that you're going to be asked to give during that window. Hey, wait a minute, when's that window? Oh, it's on the dashboard. So look at all the resources we've been giving you. Let's come back together in 15 minutes. Look at them, give us some feedback, write it down on a piece of paper, bring it up here, we'll address it. You've seen we are as transparent and as honest as possible. Write something down, we'll talk about it. 15 minutes. All right, we're gonna wind up this session, and I know no one's going to be disappointed to go home a tad early. So I wanna address this because this was textbook. So a question came up that said, I'm looking at the assessment, and I don't think our kids it's matching where we're gonna be on that first assessment. It's okay. Remember how we said, just like everything else, we create those assessments, we tweak those assessments as we go, we re-examine what's happening, we get some feedback and say, our kids didn't score great on this, why? Is it the assessment? Is it what we're teaching? Is it when we're teaching it? Is it how we're teaching it? So it's okay if we get those first round of assessments and everyone in kindergarten is low on that first assessment. That's our responsibility then to say, 27% of kindergartners scored low on assessment 1, on benchmark 1, excuse me. That tells us we took a swing and we missed. We missed with the assessment. Or, I'm going to pick on Parkside, if Parkside scoring 27%, but the district average overall was around 70, that then is a conversation for those kindergarten teachers to say, that's interesting. I wonder what is our pacing guide? Did we not get to that? Oh, you know what? We didn't assess it this way. Or I was thinking it was this. All those are great conversations and valid conversations and professional conversations. What we don't want to do is say through an email, who made this assessment? I want to know where they live. That's not going to help anybody. You also see some people in the room going, I don't know who made it. Yeah. So that's not the point. The point is giving us that direction, that commonality, that focus to say, what are we doing at the district level? And if we swing and a miss, at least we're swinging and a miss with something that makes sense, like computation or phonemic awareness. All right? So give us the time on that first assessment to try this, what we're doing. If we swing and a miss, then we'll let you know, hey, it was a bad assessment, we're going to be better. Now, how do you get feedback to us? Let's say that we're not liking this assessment, we're thinking we're not going to be there yet. Email us. You see how accessible we are and very honest and open we are. Just email us and say, I'm a little concerned about this. Or wait till after the assessment and give us that feedback. We'll post something on the Connect that says, give us your feedback, K-2. Put it in there, put your questions in there, we'll monitor that, give us your feedback. Quarter assessment 1 didn't make the mark, or it was too early, or it's too late, or it's not stringent enough, it's not rigorous enough. Now remember, you're one voice and one school, and we're looking at all 11. That's the problem with a district assessment. All right, that was textbook, again, of why we do common assessments at your level, because if Kim and her teammates want to make a different assessment for their common assessment when they're assessing the standards, that's up to them. They shouldn't be calling me saying, hey, this common assessment's not, that wasn't me, you guys created that one. The benchmarks that we create, absolutely give us feedback on. But those common assessments on the critical standards, it's up to you to make those match your instruction and match what's happening. I want to give a shout out again to K-2, especially our 3rd grade teachers who aren't here, but they will hear this whenever they come on Thursday. Your common assessment numbers, percentage-wise, match ISTEP to a T and iRead to a T. You guys are doing great things with those common assessments. So there's a great comparison and great correlation between the two. So we know the way you're scoring and the way that you're doing your work is dead on to what's being assessed in those upper grades. So thank you for that. All right, any other questions that came up?
So with the feedback, don't go home tonight and print a set of these for your class. So don't print these yet, okay? The window opens on September 25th. So we have feedback about adding pictures and something else with directions. So please don't walk away and print as bold tonight.
We're listening.
Yes,
We're listening, we're monitoring, we're adjusting.
yes.
But we do need a spot on there that says feedback, something that they can.
It'll be there tonight.
Questions and comments.
You know it. Okay. Anything else?
Which is why we're having this meeting.
Yeah.
And don't you decide those people who are here.
We recorded it. It's right there. Hi. Okay. All right. If they're not here, please let us know questions, concerns. It's not your responsibility. We'll post this to the district focus and they can go watch an hour and a half video.